And that means that um, that means that that dopamine is the enzyme that helps us react to what's happening around us, to external stimuli. Acetylcholine, which virtually no one has heard of, is another enzyme, and that is the internal feel-good enzyme. That is the enzyme that responds to things we feel inside, things we're thinking and feeling inside, as opposed to the external stimuli. And it's been proven that dopamine is more prevalent and or more sensitive and reactive in extroverts and acetylcholine in introverts. So we are wired differently. It's why we are what we are. Because as introverts, right, we're not getting the rush from the external that the extroverts get. Hugely important. So, so in this world that biases one or the other, in general biases introverts, right? They're biasing us on how we are made genetically, right? So that's a huge piece. Now, shy is different, but is often conflated. Shy is fear of being judged by others, right? That is different. So the opposite of shy isn't extroversion; it is being outgoing. And they get conflated because the same result is seen, which is a pulling back, perhaps less time with others, more time to recharge than the extroverts might need. Really, an important distinction. You can be a shy extrovert, right? You can have that dopamine really charging you, but still be shy because you have a fear of how people will judge you. Now, I don't know how many of you have read Quiet. Let me know if you have. Quiet by Susan Cain. I actually have it right here because I'm rereading it for the third time. Revolutionized my life. This book came out, I believe, 11 years ago, in 2013, and it was such an eye opener for me because it was almost around the time we were developing Asking Matters and the styles. And it was such a validation. And I have to say, I always recommend this book for anyone who wants to do a deep dive because it was a revelation. And Susan would say one of the things that's interesting is she says, why is there this bias towards extroverts? Uh, if we were, if genetically we were inferior in some way, over time, right, we would have become fossils, right? We would no longer be here. So we have to have benefit that we're still here. And she talks about hunters and gatherers in the world, right? That you need both, that you have people out hunting and gathering, but then you have people who are um, um, taking care of the homestead, right? While others are out hunting and gathering, you need people who are circling the wagons, if you will. So evolutionarily, uh, we're obviously important. So why? By the way, all the pictures you're seeing today are actually YMCA from YMCAs around the country. I do a lot of work with Ys. As a matter of fact, I'm headed to Denver this afternoon because I speak at their annual conference. And so all these pictures are from YMCAs and such important organizations. I'm sure most of us have interacted with them. So why do we make great fundraisers? Well, the number one reason is listening. Listening, listening, listening. In a conversation, we're either talking or we're listening. Like you can't be doing both at the same time. And our goal is to listen and to get our donors to do the talking so that we learn from them. There's this perception. One of the things that can trip us up as fundraisers is feeling we have to share everything but the kitchen sink, or including the kitchen sink, with our donors. We got to tell them everything that's wonderful about our program. Not true. Let me ask before I go further. On average, and almost all of you have a good deal of experience, what percentage of the time would you say your donors talk in your meetings? Any sense of that thinking back? How much of the time do your donors talk rather than you talking? And while you're typing 85, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. 80, those are fantastic numbers and not easy to get to. So I really applaud you, Tanya and Lori, because sometimes those meetings, we can't get our donors to talk. So sometimes we have to keep doing the talking to keep the meeting going. If we do too much of the talking, though, what we do is we create what's called a wall of words, where we've talked so much that people can't remember any longer what we've said, or they're actually not paying attention any longer, or they remember the less important things. Because we all know, like playing telephone, you can only remember so much. And we risk our donors remembering the less important things. But more importantly than that, we risk them not feeling engaged. There's an adage, and it's true, that we remember the least of what we hear. We remember much more of what we say and do. And we remember the most of how we feel or felt in a meeting. And our donors are going to feel good if they've done the talking and we've done the listening, if they've been engaged. Right? We don't want them to be passive and sit there and feel talked to. So listening, number one, and much easier for introverts to do. We're going to come back to that in terms of the asking styles, but easier to sit back, to be quiet, to listen. And we learn by listening. So I may refer to Ron from Manderscheid from the settlement a couple of times, because we were in 1,000 meetings together in 30 years through many campaigns and such. And Ron would always say to me, because I developed relationships with many of those donors over the years, and I would have meetings without Ron, right? And then I'd say, oh, did you know Kathy and Mike XYZ? Dana and her husband XYZ. And you say, how did you learn that? And I'd say, well, I asked them a question and I listened, right? I listened. Um, Ron is, I love the man dearly. He was an amazing CEO, fundraiser, everything. But he talked more than I did, and he asked fewer questions than I did. And he learned less than I did. And that's what made we made a great team. We took his enthusiasm and passion and leadership and my ability to be quiet and ask questions, and we put it together. So listening, number one skill in fundraising, and we have that. We're going to come back to some other skills now as we talk about the asking styles and partnering. And if anyone has any questions, please type them in. And let me also say that one of the, for those of you who are at 50, 35, I think you're golden at 60 to 65. Fine at 50. And I always say I teach some classes on the actual meeting itself, where we're going through this arc of the ask or arc of the conversation. And I say, take one or two things away that'll help you talk a little bit less. Anything that'll help bump up that percentage of time that the donor talks. So on to the asking styles. So the asking styles came about because my founding partner, Andrea Kielstedt, some of you may know her from the Capital Campaign community in particular. She and I founded Asking Matters together and developed the asking styles. And we thought, well, there have to be many ways to ask, many ways to be effective. Now, we're not talking about direct mail. We're not talking about phone-a-thoning. We're not talking about crowdfunding. Some of those are very scientific today. We're talking about the building of relationships and asking for gifts. In fact, where the big dollars are and where most of the dollars are with individuals and bigger gifts, where we have this opportunity to be ourselves and build a relationship. There have to be many ways to do it because we all build relationships in our lives and we all do that differently. So we thought, what are the two characteristics that impact how we interact with people, what our asking style is, right? How is our asking style derived? Well, first and foremost, and directly related to today, is how do we interact, this extrovert introvert? And we've talked about it in some ways now. So let's talk about two other things. One is deriving energy, right? So we as introverts derive energy from ourselves, and extroverts derive it more from others, right? Because extroverts have that dopamine and are responding more and more more intensely to others and to those situations. And because of those longer neural pathways, extroverts think out loud, they process out loud, they talk to think, and introverts think to talk. We like to stop and then answer. How many of you have ever answered a question and then answered it again because you felt your answer wasn't solid enough? If you have, type that in the chat box. I have had to learn over time. I used to do that a lot. If I had to respond quickly and give an answer, by the time I finished, I realized that answer wasn't good enough, that I wanted to be more, detailed or clearer in what I said, and I had spoken too quickly. This is a challenge, obviously, in conversation. The conversation all the dang time, Sachi says. That's right. The world works quickly. Conversation can be fast, and it doesn't allow introverts the time to process. I hope this is all starting to come together for you and be these aha moments that I've had, right? That we need more time. If we don't take that time, or if we're not given that time, it's hard. This is one of the reasons special events and big groups of people can be challenging to us. They are to me, because, okay, now you're in a group of people and the conversation's ricocheting back and forth. Unless someone stops and says, Brian, what do you think of this? I'm not going to be able to insert myself without speeding up, maybe cutting someone off to jump in. Very difficult for me to do. Makes it harder to meet new people, because I've got to answer their questions quickly without knowing who they are. And often I want to put someone's question in the perspective of who asked it. All these things going on in my head, in my long neural pathways. So this impacts every relationship we have in fundraising. It impacts the relationship we have with donors, with the relationships we have with our peers, our bosses, our boards, the people who report to us. An important lens. The second is, how do we take in information? Are we analytic or intuitive? Much clearer dichotomy. Do we start with data and derive the idea, or do we have some gut, some idea, and then we see if the data supports it? This is going to impact that passion statement you typed in at the beginning. It's going to impact why you are passionate about your organization and how you're going to speak about it, whether it's going to be in based on the data and the outcomes and such, or based on some global sense of what's important and how we're trying to move the world. This impacts how you talk to your donors. It impacts how you answer their questions. It impacts how you present to your board and so forth. And I will say, since I mentioned data, we're now living in a world where people are talking about outcomes measurements all the time. And actually, it's sort of an aha moment I'm having as we're speaking right now, that that can be a little more challenging if you're intuitive, because we get it and we move ahead because we get it, but other people need the data to be as sure as we might be. And I happen to be an intuitive, though that's getting ahead of it. So now, so we come to the four asking styles. I'm going to talk about each one individually. No one fits cleanly in one box. At the end, I'm going to give you another way to learn your asking style. We do talk about primary and secondary, but let's talk about each one and see which one at the end most sounds like you. So we start with the rainmaker, the analytic extrovert, very objective, fact-oriented, goal-oriented. I'm going to close 5 gifts. I'm going to raise $100,000 in our annual campaign. I'm going to meet with 10 donors. Very strategic and going about it, very driven. Great skills in fundraising, where, well, we're dealing with a challenging field and we need to keep our eye on the prize. The go-getter, the intuitive extrovert, big picture thinker, life of the party, makes friends easily, quick on their feet, very engaging, great skills as we're trying to bring our donors closer to the organization, as we're trying to engage people and excite them about the organization. Then we have our kindred spirits, our intuitive introverts. I'm a classic kindred spirit. We are feelings oriented. We wear our hearts on our sleeves. Everything tends to be personal. I have finally decided at 61, it is who I am. I'm watching it, I'm working on it, but I'm always going to be a little more sensitive than others. And because we're so sensitive, we tend to be attentive to other people's needs. We tend to be caring and thoughtful to them, selfless. We may put others first. Great skills when we're trying to make our donors feel they're important, that they're heard, that they're in the fold. This is not to say a rainmaker can't be caring or a kindred spirit can't be strategic. We all have a little bit of everything, but we tend to fall in one category. And some of us are more uber this than that, and others of us are more, to use a term we used earlier, more ambiverts. And then we have our mission controllers, the analytic introverts, the Eagle Scouts who always get the job done, very dependable, methodical, detailed, dot their I's, cross their T's. We can always count on them, very planful. Now, there's another way we look at the four, and it's through the core question each of us asks when we're trying to figure out what's important. The rainmaker saying, well, what's the goal? Okay, it's got to be, what's that quantitative goal? That will help me decide how to move forward. The go-getter saying, well, what's the opportunity? What can we make happen? So both of them look more into the future, the rainmaker and the go-getter. Then we have the kindred spirit who says, what moves my heart? What am I feeling? And the mission controller saying, okay, well, what's the plan? Because, hey, guys, it's all well and good, but without a plan, you can't accomplish a goal. Without a plan, you can't fully take advantage of the opportunity. And frankly, if the plan doesn't support it, I'm sorry to say, but it doesn't matter what your heart is thinking. It has to be doable. So type in the chat box, which of these four do you think you most align with? Which of the four? We're not going to hold you to it, but I hope everyone types in. A lot of mission controls, kindred spirits. So far, all the more introverted asking styles, lots of mission controllers. Kindred spirit between mission controller and kindred spirit. While you're all typing in, let me share. So I am a kindred spirit mission controller. And the way I define that is, well, I do have, I have an economics degree, I have an MBA, and I have an architecture degree, and I have not used any of them. It's a very long story, but I do have this sort of planful, organized, methodical, numbers crunching side. Um, for me, it's all gut and feeling at the end of the day. Um, but I often end up leading things. I have no desire to lead anything. I'm happy if someone else makes all the decisions. I'll go along with all the plans. I end up leading because I can. I can be organized, which is important for leading. And as a kindred spirit, I would feel bad if I didn't come through. That's how I describe my kindred spirit mission controller, and probably why I'm fundraising, right? Um, so that, and there is a primary and a secondary. Um, and we're going to talk about how to find those out. But first, I want to talk about partnering. Um, and Sachi, you're saying you can see yourself in all. So let me say one more thing. Now, ambiverts, well, ambiverts are going to be in the middle in terms of introvert, extrovert, but there are many people who see themselves with a pretty much equal balance of these characteristics. And there are others of us who really see ourselves far in the corner. And I know I'm pretty far down here in the kindred spirit because I am really challenged by rainmakers. They come on strong. They always want more data. They're not process driven, whereas I like to take time and to process. And I can think of a number of board members and donors now who were great people. We had great relationships, but I always had a bit of, you might even call it anxiety, dealing with them because I'm down here. Let's talk about partnering for a second, because this work, the best fundraising is done by a team. Recently, my son asked me, he was working on some project, and he said, "Well, Dad, how much money have you raised in your lifetime?" And I said, that's a really hard question because I wasn't singularly responsible for most of those gifts. As a matter of fact, the biggest gift ever came long after I left the institution. It was a bequest, a massive bequest. I had helped for 8 years in that relationship, right? Well, do I get credit? Who gets credit? I don't know. All I know is that lots of us worked on that. At the time, I was fundraising for my alma mater, Brandeis University. I was in charge of fundraising in the Midwest out of Chicago. And we had the president involved at times, the senior vice president for philanthropy, various faculty were involved, right? And then that relationship continued after I stopped working. And actually, the person, it was a Chicagoan, Rosalind Cohn, who died, I don't know, in the last 8 to 10 years, and her daughter Marcia Cohn, who ended up leaving $50 million to the university. Now, I did that with other people. All to say, this really should be teamwork. There's another reason, and there's an important reason. There are a few important reasons to partner, and I hope the asking styles, in addition to other things, will help people understand how to partner. I believe in partnering on relationships because for two reasons. One, when there's a second relationship between a donor and the institution, it strengthens the bond the donor has. I have heard that there's a sense that if there are three relationships, it's very unlikely the donor will leave stop supporting the institution. So that could be a development person, an executive director, and maybe a board member or volunteer, but at least two. The second is, and we know this, development, the average time in a development position is under 2 years. And if we as if we're development staff, full-time development staff, and we're the only person with a relationship to a donor, when we leave, that donor is a bit at sea. And we've all experienced that. So by having two relationships, there's continuity. Now, there are many different ways to partner. Sometimes it's just who's available. So at the settlement, Ron and I did a lot of we were partners often because we were the two likely sources, and we didn't have a deep bench, especially at the beginning. There was no full-time fundraising staff. So sometimes you're just choosing whoever's available. There may be opportunities to choose a partner who's diagonal from you on this grid. Meaning, since almost everyone here is on the introvert side, trying to partner with a go-getter or a rainmaker so that we bring a more balanced set of inherent skills to the table. I'd love you to type in the person you currently partner with the most in fundraising, just the first name of the person you partner most with. It could be someone on your development team along with you, or if you're an executive director, you're director of development, or your board chair. And then think of that person's asking style. Think of that person's asking style. And type in, what do you think that person's asking style is? Just so I know you're thinking about it. What do you think that person's asking style is? And while you're doing that, go-getter, I see. So Ron, my buddy, my dear friend, go-getter. Another go-getter, another go-getter. We got a bunch of go-getters so far. How does that impact the relationship? What does that mean for introverts? Right? It was really helpful to have a go-getter because Ron could open the meetings. He would be chattier while I was watching and listening. Someone always has to be listening. Imagine if two go-getter fundraisers go out, there's going to be a lot less listening. And there's going to be, and the meeting can also get a little loopy. Ron could talk a blue streak and didn't keep in mind, he was a go-getter kindred spirit, that there had to be some structure and we had to move the meeting along, and it was up to me to do that. So I was really lucky to partner with him. It would have been ideal maybe to partner with a rainmaker because we were both intuitives and neither one of us brought the analytic side. Now, of course, Ron knew the numbers and such, right? But we always led from the intuitive side. So as we partner, we can think of our introversion and for others as well. Let's say we have an introverted board member. Who might that board member partner with? Let's say we're a kindred spirit and the board member we're going to partner with, or the executive director we're going to partner with, is a kindred spirit, and we're going to see a rainmaker. What does that mean for the two of us as introverts going to see this analytic extrovert? How might we prepare? Right? How does that impact the relationship? It's turned out to be, we started with who you are, but that's how we started with the styles, but they've become so rich in understanding this full dynamic in the meeting through the eyes of what's the donor like. We're going to talk about donors in a little bit. And this is generally about fundraisers, where if today is fundraising for introverts, but I think it's important to have this whole framework of the asking styles as we dive further into introverts. So this is an exercise not for today, but this is an amazing exercise to do with your fellow fundraisers, whether they're your fellow staff, your board, whatever it is, whether you might have a fundraising committee, or you might have an event, a walk, and you have all these people raising money. How how do your styles interact? Let's see, is that my next slide? In 2 slides, I'm going to talk about the quiz we have. Uh, well, let me actually go to that. Let me say the number one thing here is for that we're all different. No one is necessarily more or less effective, just different. And that is really important to get across in terms of introverts. Everyone looks at the rainmaker as the classic fundraiser. When people think fundraiser, they think rainmaker. And go-getters, of course, they think schmoozer. Oh, who can go out there all the time and glad hand and become friends with everyone? That's a fundraiser. Key to understand no one has it all. No one has it all. Took me 25 years to understand that. We all have skills. And as we're going to talk about with donors and such, not every style is perfectly matched inherently to a situation. What makes us best match is our ability to listen, ask questions, and so forth, to get out of ourselves, whoever we are. And easier for the introverts to step back and do that. So we do have, I keep alluding to this way to find out more. So we have a 30-question true-false quiz at Asking Matters, free for everyone. quiz.askingmatters.com, or anything with Asking Matters in the name will drive you there. And I really encourage everyone on your team to take this. Whenever I train, whenever I do a workshop with a board or such, I have everyone take this in advance and share their results with me or someone, and then we come to the table and we discuss what that means. This is something you can do on your own to train staff and volunteers, to have people break into groups of 2 or 3 to discuss their style and how they might work together with someone of another style or the same style to understand fundraising, to understand teamwork better, and to learn to appreciate each other more, to see what each of us brings to the table as opposed to what we don't bring. So that is asking styles. Introverts and special events. That's me. I hate special events. Hate them. When I moved to New York in '99, and I eventually became the executive director of a social service agency there, a settlement house like Northwestern Settlement and the old Hull House and others in Chicago. And we're having our community dinner, which was in one of our ugly big cinder block multi-use spaces in a housing development. To say it wasn't glamorous. It was $25 a piece. It was not a fundraiser. It was for the whole community to get together, and I was the speaker. Right? And they mostly come to hear me. I was now the executive director. And I was in the hall thinking, can I be anywhere but here? Anywhere. And I jokingly said to my staff that I would give the guild $1,000 if I didn't have to go into the room. It was worth it to me. And people always think, well, I'm so social, I'm so this, and it makes me cringe. I'm going to this conference. I'm going to present, which I love doing because I get to share what I've learned. But most of the time there is in this huge convention space, and it will overwhelm me. I will not go to a single mixer. And they know that. I do my thing. They don't force me to do the other stuff. I would cringe at the thought. They will all ask me, they'll see me in the lobby and they'll say, come join me come on, Brian, come to the bar. I've never gone to the bar. I never go to the bar. I never hang out after something. And the special events drive me crazy. And they can be difficult for for introverts. But the problem is when we think of special events, we're mostly thinking of endless interactions with people. And while there are endless interactions with people, there are also moments for quiet one-on-one, which is where we shine. So I don't know how many of you have some sort of fundraising event that is dinner, food related, where you eventually sit down. That cocktail hour can be difficult for introverts. But when we get to the table and there's just one person on either side of us, and we can have a more in-depth conversation where we actually have more time to respond, to think, we can ask questions and so forth, we shine. So we have a place there. In fact, I've learned that for the way to make the first part of the event palatable is to reach out to a few people in advance. I think this is a good fundraising technique regardless, but to reach out and say, hey, hi, Bob, I can't wait to see you at the event. Hope we'll find time to chat. And then Bob will probably write back and say, looking forward to it, Brian, which means Bob's going to be looking for me, Bob, my donor, and I'm looking for him. And then it's more natural if we come together. And I can have a few of those conversations rather than walking into this room cold and then trying to figure out, well, who do I see first? I'm going to go to that person. I might not have planned for what I'm going to say, but I have to do that. So you can't see everyone. You can't talk to everyone. There's an adage, Jerry Panis, I think, used to say this. I'm sure many of you remember him or know of his books. If we set out to cultivate everyone, we'll cultivate no one. Gets back again to the introvert, right? If all we're doing is reaching out a little bit to everyone, we may not be cultivating any of them. When we have those meaningful conversations, even at special events, we are moving the needle. So really important to understand that there is a role for introverts at these events. In addition, who's going to plan them? Who's going to plan the walk? Who's going to take care of all the logistics? Our mission controller, right? Who's going to do that? Can you imagine having a special event without a mission controller? Can you imagine having a special event that's planned entirely by go-getters? Right? It isn't going to start on time, end on time, something's going to be missing. They're going to have this, they're going to bring excitement, right? The mission controllers are going to bring plan. We're going to remember it's about the people and make sure the people are honored and feel good. We, kindred spirits, are going to be great at following up, and, well, mission controllers are going to do that planfully, and we're going to do it in a warm and fuzzy way. Rainmakers understand strategically you got to follow up, but they're on to the next deal. They're driven for the next prize, the next shiny object. And go-getters are just less strategic, less focused, right? So you can see where each of us has a role. Introverts have a role in planning events. We have a role at events. We have a role after. And it's important to acknowledge that and not ask us to go to the bar after, not ask us, it's okay after the event. Sometimes the staff goes out for a drink. It should be fine for the introvert to go home. We should allow our introverts to go home after the event. And we also have to encourage our introverts to find ways of self-care, because it takes so much out of us to go to these events. One of the things I enjoy most about conferences and trainings is afterwards, when I have quiet time and I get on the plane and it's just me for a couple of hours or a whole day or whatever it is. I find after I give my presentations, I've got to go to my hotel room. Other people are going to be jazzed. People come up to them. They want to talk about it afterwards, right? I need to honor myself and do that. I never, so I can eat in the big ballroom whenever I want at the Y conference, and I will never go into that room. I'd actually rather pay for my own food than have to continue socializing. It's just too much. And the Ys know it, and I do my presentations, and they obviously are happy with those, right? So I have learned how to do this, and we need to encourage that, in particular with our introverts and special events. Oh, before we go on, let me ask, since most of you are introverts, if there were one event at your organization that you could get rid of, which one would it be? Type it in the chat box. If you could get rid of one event at your organization, oh, that was fast. That was fast. Our annual fundraiser. We got rid of them all. That's great. I'm a big fan of cultivation events and thank you events. I hate fundraising events, and I think they often leave a lot of money on the table. That's another whole story. But thank you events, cultivation events, small ones, amazing. Fundraising events, oof. Silent auction and raffle, yes. Oh my gosh, I just this course I'm in just did an online auction, and spent so much time getting all these gifts, and they raised some money, but I bought one item, and basically I stole it. I put in the lowest bid, $50. No one ever bid against me. I can't imagine the amount of time it took to get the one item, which was easily worth $600, and no one, often happens. Anyway, it doesn't mean we shouldn't have fundraisers and we can't raise money from them, but um, I think it's probably helpful to have introverts in on that discussion, because we'll have fewer than more. Okay, introverted donors. I love this topic because it actually took me a while to come to it. And it was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago when someone in a seminar said, well, what about introverted donors? And I thought, oh my, we haven't even talked about that. So important, because guess what? By the way, what percentage of people do you think are introverts overall? Type that in the chat box. What percentage of people do you think are introverts? What percent do you think are introverts? I know I'm asking you to type in a question that has a yes or no. I'm seeing everything from 30 to 60 to 70 to 30. According to Myers-Briggs, it's at one point it was 50.3%, just slightly over half. Even though it's scientific, there are all these different rubrics and testing methods. The bottom line is introversion is not like left-handedness or being double jointed. Introversion is not some 5 or 10 or 20% of the population. It is half. And that means half of our donors are likely to be introverts. Half of our donors. So what does that mean? Whole bunch of things. First, are you going to call or write? How many times have everyone talks about calling your donors, calling your donors? If I had to call all my donors, I do a lot less work. I want to write to them. And in fact, your introverted donors probably would more likely get an email from you than a call. Let's say a call to set up a meeting. And I often talk about, how do you set up meetings? Well, if we're calling all our donors to set up those meetings, we are not using the communication that half of our donors probably prefer. Imagine that, right? With that, so someone saying, gotta call everyone, but I don't want to pick up that phone. I never do with any organization I support. I don't want to get a call out of the blue. I don't like calls out of the blue. That gets back to that think to talk and talk to think. Right? Also, we should use our skills where we have them. I can be much more effective writing to a donor than calling them on the phone, because I can make a beautiful case for, let's say, for why we should get together, or I can give them a beautiful update by email, totally personalized, but um, but in writing. Now, if I know a donor well and that donor just wants a call or a text, I can think of someone in Chicago right now, then that's okay. And over time, that becomes okay and more okay for both of us. The challenge we often have in fundraising is that we don't know our donors as well as we'd like. We don't know their preferences. We're guessing. We're trying to get to know them. And that gives us discomfort because we don't want to mess up the relationship. So we want to communicate in a way that's going to work for both of us. As we get to know them, we can ask them, what do you prefer? Because I know some people just want me to pick up the phone. And if they do, and if I know them, that's okay. They may say, please put everything in writing. Without that knowledge, we should communicate in the way that is most effective for us and will encourage us to do the most good work. So telling an introverted board member you have to call your donors, or telling someone on your staff, or someone telling you you have to call them all, and if you're an introvert, is not the right message to send. Can you think of a donor, right? Can you type in just the initials, because we don't want to, give away any information, the initials of a donor only wants to hear from you, or in general, in writing. Can you think of that? You can even just give one initial. I just want to make sure you're thinking about it. A donor you deal with who vastly or entirely prefers in writing. PC, Ronald, we all have them. Thinking of our donors in terms of introversion, extroversion gives us a roadmap for them. It helps us appreciate them, right? They may not be the ones who are most enthusiastic, and they may not be the ones coming to our events, but um, they care, and we need to build those relationships in writing. Speaking of events, which donors are coming? Your introverted donors are less likely to come to those big events you're holding. And if they do come, they're doing it out of loyalty. I know you can think of a few people right now who say, I'll be there. Don't worry, I'll be there. Not, I can't wait for our spring gala. Right? Oh, I want to be on the planning committee for that. And right, you have people who come um, because they are obligated. I made the mistake of going to an event last fall. There was a fundraiser here. I never accepted an invitation. But one of my dearest friends had a table. I joined it. And he only went to that event because he's loyal. Only went to that event. Um, and I hope that organization understands that and appreciates that. Many donors simply won't come, right? Who's more likely to decline and send a check? Often it's not because of a conflict, it's because they just don't want to be at these, right? They're more likely if you have a small intimate event to which they're invited individually, or if you have them to coffee or to come visit the program one-on-one. Now, of course, there's a lot of benefit to one-on-one, no matter what, because it's where we learn the most about someone. But it's also where we're most likely to get the attention, and in a positive way, of our introverted donors. Okay, we are on to our last topic, board members. And then I will encourage some questions. As I mentioned, it's really powerful to have your whole board take the asking styles quiz, report the results back to you so that you can map them out and then discuss how we work together and so forth. And whenever I train, I do this and I map them out. So, and I map them primarily and secondarily, and you may even want, well, you have the PDF to these slides, so you don't have to screenshot anything, but Kathy and Bridget are rainmaker go-getters. Randy's a rainmaker mission controller. Gabrielle, Teresa, mission controller, rainmaker. So you're seeing the primary and the secondary, and you can also get a sense this board is skewed this way. This board is skewed towards analytics and introverts. There's no one in the go-getter category. Important to understand that in terms of all sorts of things. Let's talk about strategic planning for a minute. Right? Your strategic plan will be strongest if it has a mix of people. You want someone who can set big goals and is passionate about getting to them and also knows how to analyze the data. You need someone who's going to think big picture, opportunity. What can we make happen? You need someone who's not going to forget the people, because not everything you do will make 100% economic sense. There are things we do as an organization that are very important, even for a small group of people, right? So we want someone who has the heart and never forgets the people involved, and we need the planner to make sure it's all doable. So the example on the screen, right, shows we might be missing that big picture thinking. We might be getting too much into the details too soon. As a matter of fact, I worked with an organization, a few times I've worked with them, I've done some training. And the first thing before I ever did a training was I read their new strategic plan. And this was a really successful, solid organization. And I felt the plan was meager, that it was more like an annual plan, a business plan, than it was what I'd call a strategic plan to take us to the next level. Then we did this analysis. Everyone took the quiz, and we found out that 90% of the board members were down here in mission controller. And I realized what had happened in their planning. It always came from a position of, can we do it? Is this doable? We need that question asked, but if it's the only question that's being asked at the table, and this is for every board discussion, we're not having the right discussion. So Lori, I absolutely will answer that question as soon as I finish with board members. That's a great question because it has become more challenging. So we map out our board. How does this impact our board meetings? How does this impact our board meetings? Well, who's likely to speak? Who's likely to speak without raising their hand? We're finding this even truer with Zoom, right? But how many times in a meeting has there's been a lot of talk, most people are giving input, and then the chair says, does anyone else have something to say? There's a moment of silence and someone raises their hand and actually has something really important to say that hasn't been said before. Often that's an introvert, because introverts are less likely to jump in. They need more time to think and process. By Zoom, it's even more challenging because it's hard to know when someone is finished talking, who's next. I was in a meeting. The chair had said, please raise your hand if you want to speak. The extroverts kept jumping in without raising their hand. And the chair said, anyone else? And this one woman said, yes, I've had my hand up. I've been waiting. So the dynamic of the board, like anything else, there's a bias towards the extrovert because the extrovert's going to take up more space to begin with. The extrovert's going to speak, and this is not to ding extroverts in any way, right? It's all on this spectrum, but the extroverts are going to be more comfortable just jumping in quickly because they talk to think, they process out loud, and we will not get a full sense of the board without giving introverts the time they need to process. So really important to understand it. Important in terms of making sure board members are comfortable, that people introduce themselves to new introverted board members, and introverted board members aren't left to try and work their way around the room introducing themselves. And then, of course, in terms of the work that board members do, where they sit on committees, how they deal with donors and fundraising, their we need to acknowledge the introverts and their strengths and challenges. So, questions and takeaways. So before I take Lori's question, I'd love everyone to type in their number one takeaway from today. What's your number one takeaway from today? What's your number one takeaway? Let's see. Great. Lay asking styles. Yes, Lori, we are great fundraisers. We're not alone. Yes, not alone at all. Oh, these are fantastic. Great. And I'm delighted that each of you is taking something else away from this. That's wonderful. Great. And now continue typing in if you haven't. Please do take the time to do that. We are great fundraisers. I've started saying we rock. I've been doing some videos, which I could live without, but I'm doing them, and I write a lot on it. And I've started to say we rock, and we do rock, and we are undervalued, and at the loss of our community. And before I get to Lori's question, your last session, the one following this one, is on acquiring, retaining, training staff of fundraisers. We have a huge crisis in the nonprofit world. We have a crisis in leadership with all the baby boomers retiring from their executive director jobs. We have a crisis in the turnover of fundraising and the fact that the number of nonprofits is growing faster than the number of fundraisers. So when you try to acquire and then train and retain them, understanding this is important. How many people have told me their frustrations as introverts, that they feel they were dinged in the job search because someone would say, you're not talkative enough, you're not this enough, or they'd get a performance review that dinged them for being quieter and not appreciating what they bring to the table. I helped on a search at a very large organization last year where I've been doing some consulting, and we were down to two candidates, and one was much quieter than the other, was absolutely an introvert. And I went to bat for the introvert because I could see her talent. I could see donors really liking that quiet dignity she brought. And I felt she would really engage, let the donors speak, and it turned out to be a very good hire. But there is a bias in our industry, and we cannot afford that any longer, in particular with what we're dealing. So let's get back to, I want to get back to Lori's questions, and please type in any others you have. We've got 12 minutes, 13 minutes left. We don't have to use them all, but we're here, I'm here. So, Lori, it has gotten harder to get meetings with people. And um, the pandemic had very few silver linings, very few. But one of them was the extent to which people became comfortable with technology and this whole idea of video chatting. So it used to be when I would teach this subject of meetings, it would be okay, the gold standard is in person, and there's nothing like in person, because when we're in person, in particular physically in person, we're listening more closely. We want to come through, we want to be seen as good, we create a higher level of empathy. But it used to be that we went from meeting in person to the phone, which is a big drop down, not to see someone's face and be able to look into their eyes. So the benefit now with video chat, and I've been thinking I'm going to do some research on this, um, is that I think we are going to end up with fewer in-person meetings, which is sad, having done this work so many years and knowing the value of it, but more face-to-face meetings through video chat, and overall more face-to-face interactions. Where that's going to end up, I'm not so sure, but people do seem to have less time. People seem to be frazzled these days, especially post-COVID. So many people working from home. It gives them more flexibility, but there are also more distractions. The day becomes fluid in a good way and a bad way, and I think it impacts the ability of people to leave. I think some people are less likely to want them to come to our home than to their office. They don't necessarily live near a coffee shop. I mean, I'm seeing all these things. Um, so first off, I want to acknowledge that it is getting harder and to appreciate that the work is harder than it was 10 or 15 years ago for that reason. I want to encourage video chat as a fallback. Um, I, I used to be able to get more people to come see the program. I still will use that as an enticement, which for some people is more helpful than it used to be. I taught in terms of what's most convenient, and I had this matrix. It was a combination of what's most convenient and how dedicated is the donor. And the more dedicated the donor, the less convenient it would be. And that still holds, right? The donor who's most passionate is most willing to come to the program and see it. For some, though, that one-on-one and coming to see the program can still be an enticement because they prefer it. Um, but I've also come to recognize that for some donors, we're going to have to do much more written communication to keep them engaged. So I don't know that I'm giving you a full solution. I think I'm trying to help uh, just talk about the environment and where things come into play, that we probably will be continue to rely more on video chatting and on writing. And hopefully that makes up for the lack of meetings in person. Um, Definitely developing more than one relationship where possible will help, because the donor will feel more attached to you. Making it more about the donor, and I'm sure being in the business as you have, Lori, for 25 years, you know this, that it's there are some people who will meet you. One of the questions I teach setting up the meeting, and one of the questions I ask is, why would your donor meet? Not why would your donor give? Why would your donor meet? Some donors will meet because they want to help you, because you've asked them. Maybe because you've asked them and they're kindred spirits and want to come through for you. Maybe because they like you, go-getters. Maybe because they really do want to know more, right? They want to know the details and they'll get more details. So you might look at them in terms of the style and why would they want to meet? What would encourage them, and what would encourage them to meet? So ask that question, because some people will meet for us and some will meet for themselves. And understanding that dichotomy better might help a bit. I don't know if that helps, but that's something to think about. Why would they meet? So Caroline has one. Once you understand if a donor is an introvert, extrovert, and their event preferences, how do you track that in your database? Is it okay to make notes? Yes, I think it's okay to make a note. I understand there are these fears of such, but I think saying my donor is more introverted is fine, because not doing it says that there is a preference or a bias and one is right and one is wrong. If all we're doing is saying a fact, like my donor is loves sports, my donor loves theater, my donor loves good coffee, it shouldn't make, there's nothing different between saying my donor's more introverted or extroverted, right? These are all the things we're learning about our donors that help us um, cater to them and bring them closer to the organization and respect who they are. So yes, I think you can track that. Now, and some of us have a small portfolio. If you're an executive director, hopefully you don't have more than 20, 25 people, I guess, that you're really having contact with. You probably can remember it. But if you're a major gift officer and you've got 200 people in your list, you got to make those notes. I still take a tremendous amount of notes. I bet I've used 1,000 of these little steno pads from Staples, the 5x8 pads. I take notes in my meetings. I don't write everything down, but I take them, I put them in folders if I'm not transferring those notes to a database, and I refer back, and I think that is a good thing to note and remember. Any other questions? Still got 5 minutes. Let me say that, well, of course, you can buy the book. I'm not here to promote it widely, but you can get it anywhere books are for sale, and all the other books. You can go to my websites and get lots of free information, lots of videos. I'm starting to post. I'm doing a bunch of videos, and I have a YouTube channel now, and I put them in LinkedIn and on Facebook. It's that all of that's free, and you may find things in there that you want to pass on to other people, in particular board members. And I want to end where I started, which is in thanking you for being in this business. This is not easy work. I tend to think fundraising is the hardest work we do in the nonprofit world. And we're not necessarily pursuing our great passion to be a painter or a veterinarian or an architect, but we're making the world a better place. And I feel so blessed that I've been in this business almost 40 years with such great people like yourselves. So I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I think we're a wonderful group, a wonderful sector, and I appreciate your work. So thank you for joining me today and for doing the work you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Brian, and especially for all of the resources that you have offered for folks. I think there'll be a lot of opportunities for people to follow up, maybe buying books, but also some of the other resources that you mentioned. And so thank you, everyone, for participating with us today. We hope to see you all next week on next Wednesday with that last session that really deals with the hiring, retraining aspect of the fundraising professional side of things. We do especially, again, thank Brian for his insights and expertise today. And I thought it was a really nice touch to ask, like, what were the top takeaways from folks today, for people to put that in the chat. I was amazed at the fact that introverts are about half of a population. That was comforting, although, as you were saying, there's still that bias towards extroverts, but are learning that there's room for all of us in fundraising. It's not just about a big personality. So please do give us feedback from today, and we take your suggestions seriously. So we have in the chat the link for the evaluation, as well as when right before you log off of Zoom, it'll pop up. And we appreciate that feedback. You can make suggestions about speakers or topics as well. So again, thank you. We hope to see you next week on Wednesday for our last session. And, check out other Axelson Center programs, our 25th reception, 25th anniversary reception, that's on May 16th. Our conference that's coming up on October 18th. All of that is available on our website. So have a great day, everybody, and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to end the meeting now.